hmm
It can get kind of hazy in there, especially whenever the people who originally created that system maybe no longer work at that county. Maybe
Yeah.
it's super old and you have maybe an outdated SOP. But yeah,
What is that process? Like, why is it that unique and specialized? What
I would
function
say
is it that we're trying to replace?
so we're trying to replace it is basically SAP, their old ERP system, couldn't do certain reporting needs. So in order to fix those reporting needs, they had to go and create their own system.
Mm.
Being able to lasso that back into their ERP system or their EAM, that's why it's difficult because they're so used to it being in a proprietary system that was created by somebody who doesn't work there anymore.
Yeah, and that's such a good point because when we do modernization projects on ERP or EAM, it's very easy to overlook those micro products and the microservices, right?
Mm,
You've had, let's just say SAP or Tyler for 20 plus years. And because these are major products, they don't necessarily, unless you get into super customization with those products, they're not going to solve every problem for you. Now, what's happened over the last 20, 30 years is people, organizations have had smart people within their organizations that understand the data and the workflows. And so they build their own product to
mhm,
support the workflow. And when you're replacing a 20 plus year system, you have to, in your assessment phase, in your requirements definition phase, keep track of these microservices because
mhm.
it's not one to one. You're not going to find something that is super custom built for your organization in a modern SaaS system. Can they do it? Sure. It's going to cost you
Money,
time and
yeah.
money
Mhm,
and customization, which traditionally is a bad word. So
mhm.
let's take a couple of questions, and those of you joining us, jump in the chat box, tell us where you're calling from or watching from, and any questions you might have. So I'm going to take one from Clay. Hi, Clay. What does GIS have to do with EAM? What a great question. You said GIS based EAM system. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know, GIS stands for Geographic Information System.
hmm
Basically, the way I like to imagine GIS is if you're looking at Apple Maps, Google Maps, that in and of itself could be classified as a possible GIS. It's a little bit more on the navigation side, whereas GIS is more of gathering assets and putting them on a map. But it is an interactable map. So GIS would be assets like roads, bridges, culverts, manholes. All of that stuff is being maintained by a county, so it's
hmm
getting accounted for in a GIS database. That GIS database needs to then interface with your EAM so that whenever the EAM has a map function like CityWorks, that map function can then pull all of that data from the GIS in order to be able to provide it for the end user.
So it's essentially Google Maps ish,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
a map that you've inserted your assets on, and it's got layers because if you're working for the utilities, you don't want to see the public works assets
mm-mm,
necessarily. You
mm-mm,
could, but what's important to you should be able to should be really accessible to you. So you're building layers within Esri, which is the
mm-hmm,
predominantly used
mm-hmm,
GIS platform,
mm-hmm.
um, with your assets, and that in itself is a project, right? So
Mm.
when on this project of yours, was the GIS layer and that those assets already built in, or is that a different component of going to a modern EAM system?
So the county already had a GIS system. They had a GIS database. The only problem was that is that some of those asset hierarchies were severely outdated. Some of them still are, and we are having to work through that. That's
hmm
another thing that especially consultants and implementers should be on the lookout for is
Right.
asset hierarchies. GIS asset hierarchies are super important because from my point of view, if you have a client who has an outdated asset hierarchy and they're getting
hmm
ready to switch to a brand new ERP system, that's going to require new workflows that they might not be used to. If those workflows are tainted by a poorly put together asset hierarchy, it's going to be confusing for the end user, and user adoption is going to end up being negatively received.
So what comes first? It's kind of like a chicken and egg situation, right? Do you build your GIS independently of an EAM deployment, or is that connected? Do we have to do this together?
I think your options could be fluid. I think if you are a well-maintained county, you should always strive to always have your asset hierarchies well kept, because eventually, and what we've seen is it could end up costing you money in the long run, especially whenever you need to transition to a new system. Um, I would say for everybody, it's not going to be the same. For some, it's going to come. We need to do our asset hierarchies and redo them, make them better before we implement. And some, it's going to be, dang, we're in a position where now we need to update them. Otherwise, our project's going to get pushed and go live might get pushed. More money is going to be needed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could end up being a slippery slope.
Well, and it's such an important piece of an EAM solution, modern EAM solution. You want it to be geospatial. You want it to be searchable on a map because you're on a large county project like that or a transit project. Your assets are dispersed. They're not in one building. They're not
Hmm.
in two buildings.
Hmm.
They're dispersed across
A
thousands
county.
of miles of county.
Yeah.
And so keeping track of it on an Excel sheet or a table is really, really not useful, right? As
Hmm.
a manager of these assets, you have to be able to see geospatially, number one, where these assets are on the
Hmm.
in your county, and two, what else is going on, right? So now you have to interface with the utility company, the gas company, the telecom companies, because they all have assets deployed within your county.
Hmm.
And so there is a lot of regions that do regional GIS because interfacing with other agencies that have assets within your county is so important.
Hmm.
How is that being handled on your project, if at all?
Um, could you give me another example of what you mean by that?
Yeah, like if I'm running AV County,
Hmm.
right? My assets are roads. I
Hmm.
don't have a utility. I have school buildings. I have sheriff's offices.
Hmm.
But then there's also the gas company in town, let's just say KUB, that has
Hmm.
assets in my region.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And when I'm planning for my GIS, I need to be able to see other companies and other organizations' assets. And what I'm trying to get to is there some kind of regional planning for GIS in that county? Or or do they have their own assets and that's it within this GIS platform?
Yeah, so from this county's perspective, they really only have their own. The way it's split up is mainly by the departments that are underneath that county. So, for
Hmm.
example, like a DES, DOT that do have assets
I
that are
see.
either vertical or linear. We don't see too many of other departments or groups
Hmm.
around that county, but we have had heard word of maybe airport, maybe sheriff. They could end up putting their assets into the GIS that's getting adopted right now.
Right.
Um, but yeah, we don't see too many different groups coming in so far right now.
Okay. All right. Let's take some more questions. That was a good one because yeah, it's such an important thing. Okay. David asks, how important is mobile access in modern EAM systems?
Well, I mean, it depends. Do you want your end users to be able to actually be in the field while they're doing their work orders or they're investigating a service request or while they're doing preventative maintenance? If you don't, then I guess it's not important for that county. But in my opinion, it's highly important. And not even mobile, but even by phone, but even mobile by tablet. Just
Yeah.
having a tablet in a car, having a laptop in a truck,
Hmm.
while we have our end users out in the field. I think you can't be a modern EAM system today and not have mobile access.
100%. Because we need to contrast that with how things were done before, right?
Mhm,
In a non-modernized EAM environment where a worker would go into like an operations center or a central location to go see what work was assigned, what work orders have been assigned to you. You would go look into a big book and say, okay, I accept this, I'm going to go.
mhm,
And then you stuff your vehicle with the parts you think you need and you head out. In a
mhm,
large county, you're maybe driving for 45 minutes to get there.
mhm,
And when you get there, you realize, oh, the job wasn't described well, the
mhm.
location's not right, or I
Correct.
don't have the tools and the equipment. So what do I do now? I have to call some other crew to come meet me or go back and forth. And it just spends a lot of time on
Mhm,
that. So with a modern EAM system, you're looking at this on a tablet going, Again, if it's geospatially managed,
Yeah.
GIS is involved. You're looking exactly where you're going. It's got all of the asset information built in, pictures, videos, how-tos, and then you're completely educated on what you're trying to go do. And then you can leave with all of your equipment. You can have uh, great insights into what you're about to be getting into.
Mhm. For
And
sure.